Have you still been struggling to figure out how to make a really, truly good Fizz deck? Well, I'm not sure if this is going to be like that grade A competitive deck, but it's still pretty freaking fun. So as always, my name is Justin, also known as Shit Just Works, and today we're going to be going over a pretty sick like combo OTK type deal with Fizz. I think this deck was originally, I think Swim actually came up with this idea. Not sure if that's the correct credit to give this deck to, but I made some changes, adding, stuff like Zap Spray Fin, a couple other changes of cards, and this deck has turned out to be quite the fun deck to play, and most people are not expecting it and don't really know how to deal with it as well, since it's not too popular yet. So very excited to go over this deck with you. So as always, we're going to go over the deck itself, then we're going to go through 2 games. Alright, so here is the deck, and you can see, if you are familiar with the original version of this deck, you can see the few differences, the few changes that I've actually made. So let's go over the original strategy first, right? So essentially you have Fizz as one of the only followers slash champions in the deck, and then you have Starlit Seer. And the original deck, it was just Fizz and Starlit Seer. You could even cut a copy of Fizz, possibly, just have, really just have that one Fizz be buffed up. And essentially you just play all your buff spells like Shared Spoils, Pocket Aces, Battle Fury throughout the game to buff the Fizz in your deck with Starlit Seer and, Shared Spoils and stuff like that. When the Fizz does finally come out, you can play more buffs on the actual Fizz like Pocket Aces again, or Battle Fury is obviously the big one here to get just a big ass Fizz, okay? Once you get a big Fizz on the field, kind of hard to kill it. The only way your opponent can really kill the Fizz is in battle. So it does feel bad if you do have to play an early Fizz and your opponent Twin Disciples or something to kill it. But generally speaking, you want to make it so that your Fizz is so big by the time it hits the field that it doesn't matter what battle tricks your opponent has, because the Fizz will just be able to take the damage like a champ. Pun intended, because he's a champion. So essentially you want to try to stall out the game. That's why you have things like Make It Rain, Brittle Steel. The Warning Shot is in here for numerous reasons. It can trigger the Shared Spoils, and most importantly, it gives you a 0-cost spell for Fizz, and activating his effect to just juke those targeted spells real quick. So a lot of draw power in here as well, as you can imagine. The idea with playing the 2 Entreat here as well is to get the Fizz into your hand when you can. You don't want it in your hand early. You want it to stay in your deck to be able to get buffed by something like the Starlit Seer. Now, I added 3 Zap Spray Fin to this. It's a little bit of a different version. You can play this as just all-out draw by putting, like 2 more Salvage in there and something else, maybe like another Entreat, and then maybe take out a Fizz and just go all out on buffing one Fizz and playing that one Fizz as high as possible, right? The way that I've been playing this deck lately is to also, depending on what the Starlit Seer hits in the deck, have multiple buffed Zap Spray Fins alongside the Fizz. So this gives you a little bit more staying power, because you will have more units and more followers on the board. This also gives you more draw. It's not uncommon to have a 6/6 or a 7/7 Spray Fin on the board, which as an elusive is still super hard to deal with, and you don't need to trigger the elusive by actually playing a spell like you do Fizz. That's usually one of the problems with Fizz, is that you can't actually attack with him until your opponent targets him, because you want to wait till they target him to play a spell to negate it, right? So kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place a lot of times with that, but there is another way to play this deck. So I just want to let you guys know, if you do want to take out these Zaps, add some Salvage, add some more draw, maybe another Entreat, take out a Fizz, definitely another great way to play this deck. So let's get into these 2 games. All right, so as always, guys, I just want to mention the deck code as well as the Mobalytics deck link will now be in the description below. We are partnered with Mobalytics now, so all your deck link goodness will be with Mobalytics. So you can see our first hand here, we got Starlit Seer. That's kind of the dream. You're constantly usually wanting to mulligan for a Starlit Seer. If you can get some sort of other draw as well to draw into the Starlit Seer in the coming turns, something like a Shared Spoils is usually pretty good, because you're bound to draw a Starlit Seer at that point. you definitely want to try to dig for that Starlit Seer quick. The other thing too is that, especially if you're playing the version with just Starlit Seer and Fizz and no Zap Spray Fin, it becomes hard to really prevent any damage incoming your way if you don't have a Starlit Seer, because you can't block, right? You can actually block pretty decently with the Seer using things like Elixir of Iron and not pick a card. The other one, Pocket Aces, that one, and buffing up the Seer a decent amount to be able to at least chump block for the first few turns, maybe by turn 4 or so. By turn 5, your opponent will probably have something to kill it. They're usually, especially like this matchup, we have Noxus and Shadow Isles. Looks to be more of an aggressive deck, but they could have a Grasp of the Undying as an example to target and kill one of the Seers. So you can see, obviously, they are prioritizing killing the Seer. Quick Elixir of Iron gets 2 triggers off. We did get the second Seer, which feels really, really good. So we're going to have some big old buff Fizzes and Zap Spray Fins in our deck. So you can see the Zap here is a very good play. The other thing with Zap, too, is I felt, anyways, that by playing the full-out draw combo, I don't know, you didn't really have much to do on some turns. Like, I mean, I guess you could have a salvage there in that instance instead, but I don't know, it just became really difficult to really consistently play the deck. I do like Zap because it gives you that unit to actually play. It does provide you more draw, albeit it's only a spell, but it does also give you a follower to actually play and possibly chump block if you need to. And you can see, like, so I have a 7/6 Fizz. I'm okay with playing a 7/6 Fizz. He's going to continue to target it. He's going to continue to do things. Like, I don't need to care about that Vile Feast because he's still 7/5 now. There's nothing to worry about, right? And he has no elusives on the board. So I can pretty freely here open attack and start doing damage on my following turn. And the good thing, too, about Pocket Aces, which you just saw, Pocket Aces is probably the one card that you do want to play, like, proactively, right? So I was saying before how it's kind of awkward attacking with Fizz because you want him to be elusive first, obviously, so your opponent can't block. And you don't really want to play the spells before your opponent plays a spell because you want to save it to negate their spell, right? Pocket Aces is probably the one card that you almost definitely want to be playing in order to attack as an elusive, right? In this case, I actually played it on my opponent's turn so I can get the level up on the Fizz, so I can actually strike and get an extra strike and get a Chum the Waters. I will say, I probably didn't need to play it on their turn. I probably could have just open attacked and then played it. And I still could have played the pick a card there too. So either way, it would have worked out. But my opponent is definitely scrambling now. You can see playing the Noxian Fervor, trying to get as much damage off. They have the Darius, and I totally forgot about this Decimate too, putting me at 1. They have the Darius, which is what's scary, right? I need to figure out a way to block this Darius without taking damage, which right now I don't think I can do. Because I can't Brittle Steel him either, which kind of feels bad. But that salvage does me wonders, right? So I can actually, excuse me, I can Fury of the North here. And then I think I actually, I end up pick-a-carding again too. So now my Fizz is back up to 10 health, and I take 0 damage. Not to mention the Elixirs of Iron. So either way, I had a way to get him up over 10 health, which prevented that 1 damage. And that's why you don't need to wait until the Fizz is like buffed up to a 12 attack in your deck. You have so many buff spells in your hand, like Fury of the North, like Battle Rage, like Elixir of Iron. Like, you don't need to wait on playing that Fizz. That Fizz will get buffed at some point as you keep drawing cards, trust me. So again, we have the Starlit Seer, first hand, the Dream. And we have a Battle Fury, which I think we get to see the Battle Fury go off this game. The one thing that feels so bad in this deck is drawing Fizz early. If you don't, so usually you want to try to wait until you have a pick a card to shuffle the Fizz back in, get some value out of it, and actually draw 3 cards. But it's not necessarily a bad thing to play the Fizz early. It's definitely questionable here, especially with my opponent having 2 Shadow Assassin. It feels really bad, not going to lie. I also get forced, I think, into playing this Zap Spray Fin when I don't want to because of the Attune. Okay, no, I end up Make It Raining, so I get the spell proc off the Crystal Seer or Starlit Seer here at Crystal Seer. Wow, those Yu-Gi-Oh days, huh? So, and then another Make It Rain to clear the elusive. So that's one thing you have to keep in mind as a Fizz player, is getting rid of other elusives, right? So I'm playing against, I think this is a Heimer deck actually, and Heimer, I'm not gonna lie, Heimer's actually one of the harder matchups for this deck, mainly because, oh, okay, it's actually not Heimer, but Heimer would be one of the harder matchups, mainly because he can just pump out elusives whenever he wants. Even this Ezreal Vi deck, I mean, Ezreal is elusive, right? So there are answers, and he just played the Shadow Assassin. I'm not sure if he's playing the Solitary Monk as well, but you have to be getting rid of those, or at least have enough buff stuff in your hand, to put your Fizz over their elusive stats, right? So we're just chugging along here. We're just continuing to play this Starlit Seer, continuing to buff whatever else is left in our deck. So right now we have essentially 2 of each left in our deck. So there's 6 units left in our deck. So we're not positive what we're actually stacking on top of here. This is one of the disadvantages of playing the 3 Zap Spray Fins, right? So whenever we get a buff off with this Starlit Seer now, we can't really guarantee that it's going to be on a Fizz. Whereas if you're just playing 3 Seer and 3 Fizz, it's pretty, I mean, the second you draw 1 Seer, now you have a 60% chance of hitting a Fizz off the buff consistently, right? And even if you don't hit a Fizz, you're hitting a Seer, which means you can play that Seer and get even more buffs, because that Seer is probably not going to die anytime soon. So perfect Fizz dodge right here. This is, man, feels good to dodge a Thermo Beam with a warning shot. Not going to lie. It never feels bad to actually use Fizz's level 2 and level 1 ability to dodge spells. So you can see here too, now we just go in with the Battle Rage. Something to note is his Nexus Strike, right? His Nexus Strike ability, and I Shen emoted a little bit earlier there, I'm not gonna lie, he had the health potion. I should have known that playing against an Ezreal deck. But anyways, the Chum the Waters is actually, like, this is a combo deck, but Chum the Waters is a very control-y type card, as is Fizz's ability, really, right? Like, Fizz's ability is inherently pretty control-y. You basically are maintaining power of the field, especially if you're just buffing him over and over and over again. Your opponent's never really going to be able to get rid of the Fizz. Like, even now, you have an 8-attack Vi that's now trying to kill my Fizz and still can't. So now the Vi's going to die and my Fizz is going to stay on the field. I think he ends up killing the Fizz, and I end up having another one in hand. But you can just see how dominant this Fizz ends up being when he gets super buffed on the field. Like, there's nothing really that the opponent can do about it. Now, Chum the Waters, what it also does, in addition to being able to help you control late game a little bit more, it gives you a 5-2 with Overwhelm. And there are some fringe matchups where your opponent, like, let's say this is Heimer control, he's going to have a lot of elusives to be blocking the zaps and the fizzes. And we are now going to have Overwhelm stuff. So the Overwhelm, that 5 will usually do 2 damage into most elusive units, if not 3. And by the end of the game, you're usually, low, like you see here. My opponent's at 3 health. So that a lot of times will help a lot more than you think, especially if you vulnerable a unit that has low health, like 1 health or something like that. You're pushing through that little bit of extra damage that you're going to need to win the game. And it might even actually have made the difference here. I'm not sure, because my opponent is obviously playing health potions, as we just saw. And this shark over here, Longtooth, is seriously helping push through that extra damage, or at least threaten that extra damage. And something I want to note, something like Make It Rain does target. So playing a spell will negate the Make It Rain with Fizz's effect. Playing something like a Withering Wail does not target. It's an AoE effect. That will not be able to be negated by Fizz's effect. So something to keep in mind. But Make It Rain multi-target does count. So even a True Shot Barrage, that will also be negated by Fizz's effect. So at this point, it's really just a waiting game. I mean, my opponent's just digging for answers, of which I don't think he's going to find, because we just got too much stuff attacking. We got 2 elusives. We only got 1 elusive blocker. Plus, we got some Overwhelm. He's on 2 mana. We good to go. And honestly, all right, the Overwhelm doesn't technically win the game here. But you can see it is pushing through extra damage, especially with the lifesteal, right? So easy peasy, lemon squeezy. All right, guys, that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed that deck. I've definitely seen it floating around on streams a little bit, being played. It's super fun. Again, not sure how competitive it is in higher ranks, like Diamond or Master, but it is nonetheless ridiculously fun to play. And I am still every day trying to experiment with some sort of Fizz controlled deck. I really want Fizz to be like a control card where you just plop him down turn 1 and he just sits on the board all game controlling everything. So we'll see if I can do that. We'll see if we can make it happen. But until next time, everybody, stay healthy, stay positive. I hope shit just works for you, and peace out.